I used to wake up before the house did. 6:30. Always 6:30. Old habits don't retire just because you do. The coffee machine, an old stainless steel Breville I bought in 2014, would click twice before finally giving in and starting its slow, reluctant drip. I like that sound. Predictable. Honest. Unlike people. By the time the first cup was ready, Daniel would already be awake upstairs. Not because he had to be, his consulting job started at 9, but because Melissa insisted on productive mornings. That's what she called it. Productive. As if breathing required a schedule. I sat at the small kitchen table. The same oak table my wife, Eleanor, had insisted we buy back in 1998 for $1,200, and watched the light come through the blinds. The left one was slightly bent. I never fixed it. Eleanor used to say it gave the room character. Now just let in a thin, crooked line of light that landed exactly on the salt shaker. Dad, you're up early again. Melissa's voice. Always smooth. Always slightly too smooth. I didn't turn around immediately. I took a sip of coffee first. Bitter. Just the way I liked it. I never stopped, I said. She walked in barefoot, holding her phone, already scrolling. Her nails were painted a sharp, clinical white. I notice things like that now. Small details. When you get older, details become louder than words. You should really try to get more rest, she said, opening the fridge. At your age, sleep is important. At your age. A polite way of saying obsolete. I sleep enough, I replied. She didn't answer. Just took out almond milk, the expensive kind, $6.49 a carton, and poured it into her glass with measured precision. A pause, then casually. Daniel and I were reviewing the utility bills last night. Of course they were. I nodded slowly. And they've gone up again. Electricity, water, even internet usage. I looked at her then. Really looked. Internet usage? I asked. I don't even know the Wi-Fi password. She smiled. A thin line. It's just overall consumption. These things add up. Everything adds up, I thought, especially when someone else is doing the counting. Daniel came in a minute later, adjusting his cufflinks like he was heading to a boardroom instead of the spare bedroom he called an office. Morning, Dad. Daniel? He poured himself coffee without asking. Used my mug, the one with the chipped handle Eleanor refused to throw away. Listen, he said, not sitting down, we need to talk about finances. There it was. No preamble, no warmth, just business. I leaned back in my chair. It creaked. Same creak it had for years. We are talking. He exchanged a quick glance with Melissa. A silent agreement passed between them. We think it's time to streamline things, he continued. Make sure everything is managed efficiently. Efficiently, I repeated. Yes, your pension, the house expenses, maintenance. I've been managing them for 43 years. That's not the point, Dad. It never is. Melissa stepped in softer tone. Practice concern. We're just worried about you. It's a big house. Too much responsibility. And with the market the way it is, she paused, watching my reaction. This property is worth at least $780,000 now. I didn't respond, because I already knew the number. I'd had it appraised 6 months earlier, $812,000 to be exact. But I didn't correct her. Let them underestimate. It reveals more. Daniel finally sat down across from me. We're not saying anything drastic, he said. Just let us handle the accounts. Consolidate payments. Maybe put the house under a more practical structure. More practical. Yes. Joint management. It's safer. Safer for whom? I looked at his hands. Clean. Soft. No scars. No burns. No memory of the work that built this place. I already transferred $65,000 last year for your temporary situation, I said quietly. And another $38,000 for the kitchen renovation you insisted would increase property value. Melissa shifted slightly. That renovation did increase value. Of course it did. And the $22,000 for your business restructuring? I added, looking at Daniel. He exhaled sharply. That was an investment. In what? Silence. The refrigerator hummed. The coffee machine clicked again, as if trying to interrupt. I leaned forward. In total, I said, that's $125,000 in 18 months. Daniel's jaw tightened. We're family, he said. The final argument, the one that cost the most. I nodded slowly as if agreeing. Yes, I said. We are. Another pause. Then Melissa, gently, almost kindly, you just don't need to carry everything alone anymore. I looked at her, really looked this time, and for a brief moment, just a flicker, I saw it. Not concern, calculation, clean, cold, precise, like someone already measuring the room after you're gone. I finished my coffee and stood up. My account are fine, I said. The house is fine. I'm fine. Daniel's voice sharpened. You're being stubborn. No, I replied, heading toward the sink. I'm being careful. Behind me, I heard it. Quiet, but not quiet enough. Melissa's whisper. He doesn't understand. Daniel answered, lower still. He will. I rinsed the cup slowly, watching the water swirl down the drain. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not loud, just a sentence, half hidden between running water and morning light. But something in it settled, like a small crack in glass you only notice when it starts to spread. And I remember thinking very clearly, they had already made their decision. I just hadn't been informed yet. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. The first thing they took was not the house. It was the small things. Control never arrives loudly. It settles in quietly, like dust you don't notice until the light hits it just right. It started with the mailbox. I'll grab the mail, Melissa said one afternoon, already halfway out the door before I could answer. A simple sentence, harmless on its own. But after that, the envelope stopped landing on the kitchen table. Bills, statements, letters from a bank. Everything began passing through her hands first, like customs control at a border I didn't remember crossing. Anything important? I asked once, folding laundry in the living room. No, just junk, she replied without looking up from her phone. Junk. I had spent 40 years paying those junk envelopes on time. 3 weeks later, I noticed the first discrepancy. It was a Tuesday, March 12, 2024. I remember because I had made tomato soup from scratch, the way Eleanor used to, with too much garlic and a splash of cream at the end. I was sitting at my desk, going through my online banking. I didn't do it often anymore. Not because I couldn't, because I had been made to feel like I shouldn't. The screen glowed too bright against my eyes. Transaction history. Scrolling. Groceries. $84.23. Pharmacy. $47.90. Then, DM Consulting Solutions, LLC. $4,800. I blinked. Once. Twice. Scrolled back up. Same line. Same number. $4,800. I didn't remember authorizing that. I called out comment first. Daniel? Footsteps from upstairs. Slow. Measured. Yes. I turned the screen toward him. What is this? He glanced. Barely a second. Oh, that, he said. That's just a transfer. For my account. It's all part of the restructuring we discussed. We didn't discuss a $4,800 transfer. He sighed. Not angrily. Tired. As if I were the difficult one. Dad, it's temporary. Cash flow. I told you my client payments are delayed this quarter. I stared at him. He didn't tell me you'd take money without asking. His expression hardened just a fraction. I didn't take it, he said. I moved it. It's still within the family. There it was again. That word. A word that, in my experience, usually appeared right before money disappeared. I want it back, I said. A pause. Not long, but long enough. Of course, he replied. When things stabilize. When? Not if. I nodded slowly. Next time I said, you ask. He didn't answer. He just turned and went back upstairs. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of the money. $4,800 is not a small amount. But it wasn't the problem. The problem was how easily it had been done. Like opening a drawer in a house you believe is yours. The second thing they took was space. Physical space is easier to measure. You can point to it. You can feel it shrinking. Dad, we're thinking of converting your study, Melissa said one evening, standing in the doorway like she already owned it. My study. Yes, it gets the best natural light. Daniel could really use it for video calls. I looked around the room. The old desk. The radio I had repaired twice. Eleanor's books still lined up exactly the way she left them. A faint smell of dust and paper. This is where I keep my documents, I said. We can move them, she replied quickly. Organize everything better. Organize, another word that sounds helpful until you realize it means removal. And where would I go? She smiled. The guest room downstairs. It's cozier. Cozier. Smaller. Further. Out of the way. I didn't argue. Not then. Because I wanted to see how far they would go. The move happened 2 days later. My things packed into boxes, labeled stacked, relocated. Efficient. Professional. Like I had hired strangers to erase me. That night, I sat on the narrow bed in the guest room and listened. Upstairs, laughter. Glasses clinking. Their life expanding into the space I used to occupy. The third thing they took was language. Words began to change. Subtly at first. Then not so subtly. You forgot to turn off the hallway light again, Daniel said one morning. I was coming back. It was on for 2 hours. I've paid the electric bill in this house since before you finished high school. That doesn't mean you can be careless now. Careless. Another label. Another adjustment. Melissa was more refined, more precise. We just need to be mindful of expenses, she would say. We all have to contribute fairly. Fairly. I began to notice something interesting about fairness. It always seemed to require more from me. By April, they had a spreadsheet, printed, left casually on the kitchen counter like it had always been there. Columns, rows, numbers, household expense allocation revised. I stood there longer than I should have, reading it. Electricity, 40% me. Water, 35% me. Internet, 50% me. I almost laughed. I don't even use half of this, I said later, holding the paper. Daniel didn't look up from his laptop. It's proportional to occupancy and usage patterns. Usage patterns? I repeated. Melissa stepped in. You're home all day. So that was it. Time equals cost. Existence equals expense. I see, I said quietly. And I did. I saw everything. Not at once, but enough. That night, around 11:40 p.m., I went to the kitchen for water. The house was quiet, or so I thought, until I heard voices. Low, careful, coming from the study. I stopped, not out of suspicion, out of instinct. Melissa's voice first. We can't keep doing this indefinitely. Daniel responded. I know, but we need a few more months. A few more months for what? The market is perfect right now. Houses on this street are going for over $800,000. A pause, then softer. And with his condition. My condition? Silence. Then Daniel again. He's not going anywhere voluntarily. A longer pause. Then Melissa, almost a whisper. Then we don't make it voluntary. Something inside me didn't break. It aligned, like gears finally catching after slipping for too long. I stepped back quietly. The floorboards mercifully silent beneath my feet. Back to the guest room. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. Hand steady, breathing even, because now finally I understood the full equation. I wasn't part of the household anymore. I was the liability they were calculating how to remove. There's a peculiar clarity that comes with betrayal, not the loud kind, not the kind people write about with shouting and slammed doors. No, the quiet kind, the kind that sits with you at 2:10 in the morning while the house hums with borrowed electricity. And you realize that every kindness you thought you saw was simply good accounting on someone else's part. I didn't confront them the next day, or the day after that. Instead, I did something far more useful. I paid attention. March 18th, 2024.7:45 a.m. I wrote it down, not because I have a good memory. I don't anymore. Names slip, dates blur. But because details matter when people start pretending they don't. Melissa left the house at 7:45. Jim. She wore that same gray set she bought for $280 and claimed was on sale. Daniel stayed upstairs. At 8:10, I logged into my bank again. The password still worked. That surprised me more than it should have. Scrolling. Another transfer. DM Consulting Solutions, LLC. $2,200. $2,200. No conversation. No warning. Just movement. I didn't react. Didn't call him. Didn't even sigh. I simply opened a notebook, the black leather one Eleanor had given me on our 40th anniversary, and started writing. Date, time, amount, like I used to do at the plant when something didn't add up. Because numbers don't lie. People do. By the end of that week, I had 6 entries. $4,800, $2,200, $1,750. $3,100. $980. $5,600. Total. $18,430. In 9 days, I ran my finger over the final number. $18,430. That wasn't carelessness. That was a system. The second discovery came by accident. Or maybe not. Maybe at my age, you just stop ignoring things that used to feel inconvenient. March 22nd, Friday. Rain tapping lightly against the windows. The kind of slow, persistent drizzle that makes the whole house feel smaller. Melissa had left her laptop open in the study. Careless or confident. I stood in the doorway for a moment, not touching anything, just looking. Then I stepped inside. The chair still adjusted to Daniel's height. I lowered it slowly. The hydraulic hiss louder than I expected. The screen hadn't locked. An email. Subject line. Listing strategy. 214 Willow Creek Drive. My address. I didn't sit down immediately. I read it standing. Given current market conditions, we recommend listing at $825,000 with expected closing between $790,000 to $810,000. Property shows well after recent renovations, kitchen upgrades noted. Renovations I paid for. Of course. Scrolling. Another line. Occupancy status. Owner-occupied elderly parent. Buyer preference. May require vacancy prior to closing. Vacancy. Such a clean word. Doesn't sound like displacement. Doesn't sound like removal. Just empty space. I kept reading. Timeline. Ideally list within 60 to 90 days to capitalize on spring demand. 60 to 90 days. I checked the date. March 20th. 2 days ago. They weren't thinking about it. They were planning it. I sat down then, slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might somehow alert them. Even though the house was empty. My hands rested on the desk. Steady. Surprisingly steady. I thought about Eleanor. Not in a dramatic way. Just a quiet memory. Her sitting at this same table years ago. Balancing checkbooks with that little frown she got when numbers didn't match. Always verify, she used to say. Trust is good. Proof is better. I almost smiled. You were right, I murmured. The third piece came that same evening. Not from a screen. From a conversation. They didn't know I was home. I had gone out earlier. Hardware store, bought nothing. Just walked the aisles like a man remembering what usefulness felt like. When I came back, their car was already in the driveway. Lights on. Voices inside. I stepped quietly onto the porch. The door wasn't fully closed. Just slightly open. Enough. Melissa's voice, sharp this time. Not the soft version she used with me. We can't risk him changing anything. Daniel responded, frustrated. He won't. He doesn't even understand half of it. You don't know that. A pause. Then lower. Did you get him to sign the updated authorization? Silence. Then Daniel. Not yet. You said you would handle it. I will. When? Another pause. Longer this time. Then, the sentence that settled everything. Before we list the house. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because there it was. Not implied. Not hidden. Said plainly. I stepped back from the door and walked to the car. Sat inside. Hands on the steering wheel. The rain had picked up, tapping harder now, like impatient fingers. Before we list the house. Before. Which meant they still needed something from me. A signature. Authorization. Control. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since Eleanor died, I felt something very clear. Not sadness. Not anger. Something sharper. Focus. The next morning, I made a phone call. 8:30 a.m. Sharp. Precise. Good morning, Harrison and Cole Legal Services. A young voice. Professional. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I said. Of course, sir. What is the matter regarding? I looked around the kitchen, the table, the bent blinds, the coffee machine, everything exactly where it had always been. My house, I said. A pause. Could you be more specific? I smiled slightly. Yes, I replied. I believe someone is trying to take it from me. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, we can see you at 11:00 a.m. today. Good, I said. I'll be there. I hung up and poured myself a cup of coffee. Same machine. Same bitter taste. But something had changed. Not the house. Not them. Me. For months, maybe longer. I had been reacting, explaining, justifying, hoping. But hope, I realized, is a very expensive habit, and I had already spent enough. I took a slow sip and looked toward the hallway where their voices would soon begin their usual morning routine. This time, I didn't feel like a guest, or a burden, or a man being managed. I felt like something else entirely, someone who finally understood the rules of the game, and more importantly, someone who had just decided to stop playing by theirs. At 72, people assume two things about you: that you are slow and that you are finished. They are wrong on both counts. Harrison and Cole occupied the third floor of a glass building that tried very hard to look more expensive than it actually was. Polished floors, artificial plants, a receptionist who spoke in a tone carefully calibrated to sound both respectful and impatient. "Mr. Whitaker," she asked. I nodded. "They're expecting you. Room 3B. Expecting. That word again. Everyone always seems to be expecting something from you. Money. Signatures. Silence. I walked down the corridor, my shoes making that hollow sound cheap buildings produce when they want to sound important. Room 3B. A man stood as I entered, mid-50s, gray at the temples, sharp eyes. "Richard Cole," he said, extending his hand. "Please have a seat." I sat. Didn't waste time. "My son is trying to take my house," I said. No drama, just the sentence. He didn't react immediately. That was a good sign. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. Not emotionally, precisely. Dates, transfers, conversations, the email I had read, the numbers I had written down. I even slid the notebook across the table. He read it carefully, didn't interrupt, didn't nod excessively like people do when they want you to feel heard without actually listening. When he finished, he leaned back. "Do you currently hold full legal title to the property?" he asked. "Yes." "No co-owners?" "No." "Any signed power of attorney?" I paused. "Not yet." He held my gaze for a moment. "Then your son doesn't control your house," he said. Simple. Clean. Like a diagnosis. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "But," he continued, "it sounds like he's preparing to." I nodded. "They want me to sign something." "Of course they do." He folded his hands. "And your accounts?" "Joint access was granted last year. Temporary, I was told." He gave a small, humorless smile. "It's always temporary." By the time I left that office, I had three things: clarity, a plan, and a number. $6,500. That was the retainer. Not cheap. But then again, neither is dignity. Step one was immediate. That same afternoon, 2:15 p.m., I walked into my bank. The same branch I had used for 23 years. The same teller, Sandra, still worked there, though her hair had turned the color of early winter. "Mr. Whitaker," she smiled, "we don't see you much these days." "I've been busy," I said. "With being replaced," I thought. "I need to make some changes to my accounts." Her smile softened slightly. "Professional mode." "Of course." "What kind of changes?" "Remove all secondary access." A pause. Then, carefully, "Are you sure? That includes your son, Daniel." "I'm sure." She studied my face for a second longer than necessary, then nodded. "All right, let's take care of that." There's something deeply satisfying about watching control return in small official steps. Click. Keyboard. Verification. Signature. "Done," she said finally. "As of now, you are the sole authorized user." Sole. A good word. I thanked her and stood up. "Oh," I added, turning back, "I'd also like to transfer $210,000 into a new account. Separate institution." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Of course." Today. Step two came the next morning. I changed the locks. Not dramatically. No confrontation. Just a quiet call to a locksmith at 9 a.m. while they were out. By 11:30, every external lock in the house had been replaced. Front door, back door, garage entry, even the small side door Daniel never used. "New keys?" the locksmith asked. "Yes," I said, taking them. I held them in my palm for a moment. Cold. Solid. Mine. Step three required patience and timing, because I knew they would come to me soon, with papers, with that careful tone, with words like protection and efficiency and family. And I needed them to believe I was still the same man, the one who nodded, the one who trusted, the one who signed. It happened sooner than I expected. March 27th, 6:40 p.m. Dinner. Melissa had cooked something elaborate, salmon asparagus, a sauce that smelled like it belonged in a restaurant neither of us could afford before they moved in. That was always a sign. Effort meant intention. We sat at the table. 3 plates, 3 glasses of wine. Daniel cleared his throat halfway through the meal. "Dad," he began, "we've been thinking." "Of course you have. There are some documents we'd like you to review." Melissa slid a folder across the table. Cream-colored, thick, prepared. I didn't touch it immediately. Just looked at it, then at them. Concerned faces, carefully arranged. "What kind of documents?" I asked. "Just administrative," Daniel said. "To make things easier moving forward." "Easier? For whom?" A flicker. Quick. Almost invisible. "For everyone," Melissa said smoothly. I opened the folder. Slowly. Pages of legal text. Authorization forms. Financial access. Property management rights. Power of attorney. There it was, neatly packaged. All they needed was my signature. I turned a page, then another. Took my time. Let the silence stretch. Finally, I looked up. "You've put a lot of thought into this," I said. Relief flashed across Daniel's face. "We just want what's best for you." "Of course you do." I nodded slowly. "Close the folder." "I'll review it," I said, carefully. Melissa smiled. "Take your time." I almost laughed. "Oh, I will." That night, I sat alone in the guest room. The folder open in front of me. Next to it, a different set of documents, prepared that afternoon, by someone who understood the law better than my son ever would. I placed my hand on top of them, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace, because they thought this was the moment they gained control. They thought the paperwork meant the end. They thought I was cornered. They were wrong. This was simply the moment I let them believe they had already won. And in my experience, that's when people make their biggest mistakes. There is a particular kind of confidence people, where when they believe the outcome is already decided, it makes them careless, loose with words, generous with expressions, almost cheerful. That evening, March 29th, 2024, Daniel opened a bottle of wine he had been saving. A Bordeaux, 2016. I remember because he had once told me it cost $180 and wasn't for ordinary nights. Apparently, this wasn't an ordinary night. Melissa even set the table properly. Cloth napkins. The good plates, the ones Eleanor and I had bought for our 25th anniversary and used maybe 6 times in total. Candles, though it wasn't dark yet. A performance. And I was the audience they expected to applaud at the end. "Dad," Daniel said as he poured the wine. "Did you get a chance to look over the documents?" I let the question sit for a moment, long enough to make him just slightly uncomfortable. "Yes," I said finally. "I did." Melissa leaned forward, hands folded, and I took a slow sip of wine. It was good, too good for what was about to happen. "I think," I said carefully, "that it's very thorough." Relief. Immediate. Visible. Daniel smiled. "We worked with a professional." "I can see that." Another pause. Then I added, "I made a few adjustments." That's when something shifted. Not fully. Just enough. "A few adjustments?" Melissa repeated. "Yes." I reached beside my chair and lifted a folder. Not theirs. Mine. Same color. Same thickness. But very different contents. "I had it reviewed," I continued, "by my own attorney." Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that tightens the air. Daniel set his glass down. Slowly. "You went to a lawyer?" he asked. I did. "Why?" A simple question, with a very simple answer. "Because I'm not careless." I slid the folder across the table, toward them, the same way they had done to me 2 days earlier. A small symmetry. Melissa hesitated before opening it. Daniel didn't. He flipped it open, scanning the first page, then the second. Then he stopped. His jaw tightened. "What is this?" he asked. "You should keep reading." He did. Faster now. Less confident. Melissa leaned closer, tried to follow. "I don't understand," she said. "This isn't what we—" "No," I interrupted gently. "It isn't." Daniel looked up, eyes sharper now, more alert. "What did you do?" I folded my hands on the table. Calm, measured. "I removed your access to my accounts," I said. Melissa blinked. "What?" "This week. Wednesday." Around 2:30 p.m. Daniel's chair scraped slightly against the floor as he shifted. You can't just... Already did. Silence. Heavy. Then, and the house, he asked. There it was. The real question. I held his gaze. The house, I said, is now placed in a protected trust. Melissa's face went pale. What does that mean? It means, I replied, that it cannot be sold, transferred, or leveraged without my explicit, verified consent. Not a signature. Not pressure. Consent. Daniel shook his head. No, that's not what we agreed. We didn't agree on anything, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Melissa flipped through the pages, frantically now. There's a clause here, she said. Eviction rights? Immediate enforcement. Yes. For occupants? Yes. Her hands froze. Occupants, she repeated. I nodded. I said simply. The room changed in that moment. Not dramatically. No shouting yet. Just a shift. Like a structure quietly realizing it's no longer standing on solid ground. Daniel leaned forward. This is insane, he said. We live here. No, I corrected. You stay here. That's the same thing. It isn't. His voice rose slightly. We've been paying expenses. With my money, we've been managing everything. Without permission. We're family. There it was again. That word, thrown like a shield. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the man I had raised, fed, funded, believed in, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger. Clarity. You stopped being family, I said quietly. When you started calculating my removal, that landed. I saw it. The flicker. The recognition. Melissa spoke next. Sharper now. No softness left. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm responding. To what? A misunderstanding. To a listing agreement, I replied. Dated March 20th. $825,000 asking price. Silence. Total. Complete. Daniel's face drained of color. You went through my email? You left it open. That's an invasion of privacy. I almost smiled. You were planning to sell my house. Another pause. Then weaker. We were trying to help you. By making me vacant? Melissa stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything. Am I? I reached into my folder and pulled out a printed page. The email. Highlighted. Placed it gently on the table. Between us. Like evidence. Because that's exactly what it was. No one spoke for a long time. The candles flickered slightly. The wine sat untouched. Finally, Daniel spoke. Lower now. Controlled. What do you want? A better question. I leaned back, studied him, then answered. I want you out. Melissa let out a short, incredulous laugh. You can't be serious. I am. This is our home, too. No, I said. It never was. Daniel's hands curled into fists. You're making a mistake. Possibly. You'll regret this. I nodded slowly. Maybe. Then I leaned forward slightly. But not as much as you will if you stay. I stood up, slowly. My joints protested. But I ignored them. I've already filed the paperwork, I said. You have 7 days. Melissa's voice cracked slightly. 7 days for what? To leave. I walked away then, not waiting for their response, not listening for it. Because for the first time in a very long while, I wasn't the one reacting. Behind me I heard it. The first raised voice. Then another. Panic dressed as anger. But I didn't turn around. Because the dinner they thought would end with my signature had ended with something else entirely. A deadline. And the beginning of consequences. They didn't leave the next day. Or the day after that. People like Daniel and Melissa don't move quickly when the ground shifts beneath them. They stall. They argue. They look for angles. For loopholes. For ways to turn reality back into something they control. Day 1 passed in silence. Heavy, artificial silence. No morning greetings. No comments about electricity or usage patterns. Just the quiet friction of two people pretending they weren't already being pushed out of a life they thought they owned. I made my coffee at 6:30. Same machine. Same bitter taste. But the house felt different. Not warmer. Not lighter. Just honest. By the afternoon, the first attempt came. Daniel knocked on my door. Not barging in like before. Knocked. That alone told me everything. Come in, I said. He stepped inside slowly. No cufflinks today. No polished confidence. Just a man recalculating. We need to talk, he said. We already did. This, he gestured vaguely. This situation isn't sustainable. I almost smiled. That's exactly what I thought, I replied. He exhaled sharply. Look, maybe we went about things the wrong way. Maybe. A careful word. We were trying to plan ahead, he continued. Protect everyone involved. By removing me? That's not what It's exactly what you meant. Silence. He shifted his weight, then tried a different approach. We've invested in this house too. There it was. The financial angle. How much? I asked. He frowned. What? How much did you invest? A pause. Then, well, the renovations, utilities, time. No, I interrupted. A number. He hesitated. Roughly $18,000. I nodded. Would you like a receipt? He blinked. What? I can write you one, I said, and deduct the $18,430 you transferred from my account last week. That landed. Hard. His face tightened. That wasn't. It was documented. Another pause. Then quieter. You've been tracking everything? Yes. Why? I looked at him. Because you gave me a reason to. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, because I'm not finished yet. Day 3 brought Melissa. Different strategy. Softer. More emotional. She stood in the kitchen while I was slicing bread. You're really going to do this? She asked. I already am. You're going to throw your own son out? I'm asking 2 adults to leave a house that isn't theirs. That's cruel. I stopped cutting. Looked at her. Cruel, I repeated. Yes. I nodded slowly. Planning to sell someone's home without telling them, I said, is also a form of cruelty. She flinched. Just slightly. We thought. I know what you thought. A pause. Then she tried something else. You'll be alone, she said. There it was. The oldest weapon. Fear. I picked up the knife again. Finished slicing the bread. I already am, I replied. Day 5 was louder. Arguments behind closed doors. Sharp whispers. A glass breaking at some point. Accidental, I assume. Pressure building. Because deadlines do that. They expose people. Strip away performance. What's left is usually not flattering. On day 7, at exactly 9:12 a.m., there was a knock at the front door. Not Daniel. Not Melissa. I walked over and opened it. A man in a gray suit stood there, holding a folder. Mr. Whitaker? He asked. Yes. I'm here to confirm delivery of legal notice. I nodded. Comment? Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs almost immediately. What's going on? He demanded. The man turned slightly. Daniel Whitaker? Yes. You've been formally served notice of termination of occupancy. You have until 6:00 p.m. today to vacate the premises. Melissa appeared behind him. This is insane, she said. You can't just... I can, I said quietly. The man handed Daniel the documents. Official. Stamped. Undeniable. What happens if we don't leave? Daniel asked, his voice tighter now. The man didn't hesitate. Law enforcement will be involved. Silence. Final. They spent the next few hours packing. Not efficiently, not gracefully, but urgently. Drawers opening and closing. Footsteps. Muted arguments. I stayed in the living room. Sat in Eleanor's chair. Listened. Not with satisfaction. Not exactly. Just awareness. Because this was the sound of truth. Catching up. At 5:47 p.m., they came downstairs. Bags in hand. No more performance. No more masks. Just anger. And something underneath it. Something smaller. Fear, perhaps. Daniel stopped in front of me. You're going to regret this, he said again. He had used that line before. It sounded weaker now. I didn't stand. Didn't raise my voice. I regret trusting you, I said. This just corrects it. Melissa shook her head. You've destroyed this family. I considered that. Then answered. No, I just stopped funding the illusion of one. They walked to the door, opened it, paused, as if expecting something. An apology, a reversal, a moment of weakness. They didn't get one. The door closed behind them with a solid, unmistakable sound. Not loud, but complete. I sat there for a while after that. The house quiet again. Truly quiet this time. No footsteps overhead. No whisper calculations. No borrowed authority. Just the soft ticking of the clock Eleanor had insisted we keep, even when it ran 5 minutes slow. I stood up slowly, walked through the rooms, the study, My study still smelled faintly of Melissa's perfume. That would fade. Everything does. In the kitchen, I pour myself a glass of water, set it down on the table. The same table. Same bent blind, letting in that crooked line of light. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. At 6:03 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice. Daniel's. Quieter now. Different. Dad. I didn't respond immediately. Then, yes. A pause. Longer than any before. Then he said, "You didn't have to go this far." I looked around the house. At the walls I had built. At the life I had paid for. At the silence I had finally reclaimed. "Yes," I said. "I did. And this time, I hung up first." Stories like this happen more often than we think. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state below. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel.